Flight attendants, please prepare for takeoff.
Stolen by Ehlers to Wheeler, back to Ehlers, scores!
Kyle Connor has the Midas touch right now.
Here's Patrick Laney. What a shot, wow.
Check the shoot, score! Oh, what a slick move by Mark Scheifele.
Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets, hosted by Jets TV.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Ground Control Podcast, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets. I'm your host, Tyler Esquivel, joined by Jets TV's Mitchell Clinton and Six City CJOB's Jamie Thomas. Gentlemen, we've reached episode 90, and doing a little bit of research going into this recording, no NHL Jet since the move, actually since Thrashers and everything, nobody has worn number 90 for this franchise. So really interesting.
Yeah.
But two players have worn 91. Don't do any research. I know the fans listening will do research, and I'm going to ask you that trivia question. Who are the two players that wore number 91 for this franchise?
I know one of them.
So don't you dare research.
Is this before I got here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So one of them would be Alex Burmistrov.
Oh, nice.
Hey, I said I was going to ask you this next week. What are you doing?
Aren't you listening, Mitch?
Okay, here we go. We'll just do it now. Okay, so
Yeah.
Alex Burmistrov is one.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Was it a Thrasher?
Incorrect. This person had a short stint with the Winnipeg Jets. He actually played for the Toronto Maple Leafs for a long period of time.
Oh.
Okay, I'm going to narrow it down even more.
Okay.
He was part of the, I believe it was 2015 team that went to the playoffs.
Yuri Tlusty.
Boom, nailed it.
Nice.
Love it.
Mitch,
All right.
for the win.
That's
Mitch, you don't even have to take part of this podcast anymore. You're done.
Yeah, now that you're done flexing.
Yes.
So, okay, bye, Mitch. Just kidding. All right, let's get into it here a little bit. So, obviously, the Winnipeg Jets coming away with a dramatic 4-3 overtime win. Patrick Laine put the team on his back in overtime and marches down the ice and puts one past Jake Markstrom. Jamie, just your impressions on the game and just what you saw from the broadcast booth.
Well, what I saw from the broadcast booth in the first period was everything that we saw back in August. I was like, this is exactly Calgary's game plan. They jump on every single mistake they make in your own end. A lot of the goals are very similar, just pucks thrown to the net, deflections in front. So you got a little bit of recipe of that. But then from the second period on, I think it was so important that Nikolai Ehlers came out and had a great shift that led to that first goal by Mark Scheifele. And then it was just pretty much the Jets game from there. I thought Connor Hellebuck was kind of not his solid self in the first period, then settled down in the second period. I know he wasn't very busy, but he was big and boring, as Mitch has alluded to many times through these podcasts. He was exactly that. Just rolled the lines one after another. And then I found the most interesting was the five forward power play when they had the 5-on-3 after Paul Maurice called the timeout, which led to a goal. So there was so many positives from the second period on. And then we can't ignore Patrick Laine. As soon as you watch that game, everyone's like, anybody wants to trade this guy? I'm like, the Jets don't want to trade Patrick Laine. That's the whole thing here. It's just there's some things are out of your control. But, man, I find when Patrick Laine is engaged physically and scores goals like that, it's hard to ignore anything that guy does. He is one of the most dominant players in the NHL when he plays like that.
Little gremlins in Zoom having some issues with Jamie's mic. Mitch, the play of the bottom six as well. Obviously the top six is who put the puck in the back of the net on Thursday night, but the bottom six really stood out to me. What did you see from that group? I know Paul Maurice praised Adam Lowry's line after the game. You look at Nate Thompson's line. They played 9 minutes. You look back over the last year or so, you didn't see the fourth line get 9 minutes a night very often. So, that obviously plays into the Jets' favor when you're trying to roll out Mark Scheifele in the third period. Guy might have a little bit more gas in the tank.
Yeah, and you guys know how much I like to, look at things like shot attempt percentage at even strength, just to get an idea of kind of how these lines performed. And in terms of shot attempt percentage, your best Jets line against the Calgary Flames was Nate Thompson, Matthew Perreault, and Trevor Lewis at roughly 66%. which obviously is a good thing if you're the Winnipeg Jets, who last year they weren't analytical darlings. They slowly kind of improved as the year went on, but eventually they kind of dug themselves a little bit of a hole. So anyways, going back to the game, I thought, Nate Thompson, Trevor Lewis making their first appearances as Winnipeg Jets. I thought they were real solid. They were a penalty kill group. The Flames did get the power play goal in the opening period, but after that, they were part of a penalty kill group that was real solid. And then, like you mentioned, Tyler, like the Adam Lowry, Mason Appleton, and Andrew Kopp line really kind of turned the tide, because they were able to take on, some of the, whether it was the Lindholm line, whoever Paul Maurice wanted to match them up against. They were able to take that matchup, and that kind of freed Mark Scheifele's line a little bit. It freed Paul Stastny's line, and really everything kind of runs down from there. And then obviously the big turning point in the game was the goal that Mark Scheifele scores early in the second. And then like you said, Jamie, at that point, the Jets just started rolling, and then it almost started to look like they were just absolutely taking it to the Calgary Flames after that. Calgary had, a couple of high danger chances as the game went on, but it was predominantly the Winnipeg Jets for the final, 41 minutes or whatever it ended up being with overtime.
Yes, and obviously, like we mentioned, a dramatic win and a great way to kick off the season. And then you move into Friday, which was a team scheduled off day. And then obviously Saturday happened, and the team did not practice out of an abundance of caution due to protocols as they relate to COVID-19. Team back on the ice on Sunday before they hopped on the plane and made their way to Toronto. Guys, this question just goes for both of you. Just how does a team deal with, having a practice canceled, at the last minute and then hopping back on the ice on Sunday? It's just it's a strange time to be in. I know it's been talked a little bit about by Paul Maurice and some of the players. Just what do you make of just the way they've handled this so far? I know we'll probably get an even better explanation this week here as the team embarks on 3 games in the next 4 days. But just how does that affect a team?
In my opinion, I thought Josh Morrissey spoke really well about it on Sunday, where he basically said if there's one thing that people have kind of had to learn how to do over the last 10 months, it's adapt. And the Jets were forced into that and had to adapt to it. And then really at that point, then you put the faith in the testing protocols laid out by the National Hockey League. And on top of that, the province of Manitoba as well, because obviously in the North Division, there's a little bit more regulations when it comes to that kind of stuff so that the teams can play. So it's a combination of those two things. I guess it kind of comes down to okay, everybody here has been tested and it's all come back negative, so everybody's okay. So and then you can kind of focus on the job at hand. Speaking of which, the one thing to really point out is a big shout out to Nikolai Ehlers, who did the right thing the day before the game. Sore throat, and made sure he stayed home, didn't go anywhere, made sure that he was tested and everything. Like, that's pretty much down to a T what could be asked of a player in this situation. So and then obviously he was able to play the game, he was eligible to play the game, and obviously had a fantastic night. So I think, to answer your question, it really just kind of comes down to be willing to adapt and then just kind of roll with it at that point and put your trust in the protocols.
As we record this podcast on Sunday night, obviously Tucker Poolman and Anton Forsberg on that CPRA list. There's obviously a number of scenarios that could have them on that list, so we shall wait and see how that plays out throughout the next few days. Jamie, we're going to move into our interview now. You and our good friend Paul Edmonds had a chance to chat with Paul Maurice. I'll let you tee up this interview.
Yeah, just getting to pick Paul Maurice's brain before the season started. And of course, as always, a wealth of information coming out, covering the power play, the defensive structure, just so great. And so, anybody that's listened to this podcast, anybody that's watched Paul Maurice over the years and listened to him, anything we throw at him, he's just got such great answers and intuition to share with us and the fans. Hopefully you guys interview this or enjoy this conversation.
Hi, this is Neil Pionk, and you're listening to Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets.
How many times did you go back and forth over the course of the summer wondering how you're going to have a configuration of your power play? And how did you arrive at the first unit remaining intact and then almost having a member from your first unit now playing on your second unit as well?
So there's a bunch of conversations. One of them is that, the players that aren't here now and the players we brought in. So Paul Stastny comes in and it changes where the puck starts, right? Who's running the puck on that power play. But so last year I ran the first unit far more than I wanted to, right? I don't believe in that minute 45 unless they're hot, unless it's all zone time and they haven't given the puck back. So you want a better split so that you can get players like Nikolai Ehlers and Matty Perreault, some valuable minutes. You also get a better result by your number one unit. But in that, when your number one unit, like ours, the way it's structured, is going, there's not a lot of motion to it, right? There's some definitely quickness. So my point being, there are players that can play more than a minute, right? There are special players that can play more than a minute around the league. With Roslovic not being here, we're looking for a right-handed shot. I got 3 solutions to that, right? So it's not like I have to leave one guy there and he's playing 2 minutes every power play. I'll just rotate that spot. They're all great players. They're all, if there's a difference in their effectiveness, it's not something that's necessarily going to be true all year, right? There's not one guy's way better than the other guy. It's going to be somebody gets hot, they stay a little bit, and then we move it around a little bit. So I like the way it looks. I think what I like is they're working hard. The first unit stays where it is because it ran 5th in the NHL, 4th in the NHL, and 15th in the NHL. And a big chunk of that was I ran them too hard, too long. But the gap between our first unit and our second unit was significant last year after Brian's injury. So we go back to 2 units now.
Staying with the first unit, Paul, what did you like from Neil Pionk in year 1, and what do you want to see more of him in year 2 with your power play?
I like he shoots the puck when he should, and I believe he's the highest scoring defenseman that we've had in Jets 2.0. So the numbers suggest that he's as good as anybody we've had back there on the blue line. He, from a power play point of view. So he's got the confidence when he pulls the puck across the line to not defer, right? I got to give it back to Blake. I got to get it over to Patty. Makes the right decision with it. If he's got a lane to the net, we want that puck going to the net.
Now to the penalty kill for a minute. Last year, you wanted to be up the ice and pressure up the ice. And if they got past you there, you wanted to make a stand at the blue line. Same kind of configuration this year?
Yeah, most of the attention to detail in camp has been in zone. So we like where we got to. When you look at the stretch of time from January to the pause, I think we ran 4th. And from February to the pause, we ran 2nd. And we felt that the change was, well, one was personnel, right? We got a little healthier, so we had killers come back into our lineup. But we got aggressive at that line and put a big emphasis on it, so we won't change that. Our in zone, Dave Lowry's had a big impact in that, and he's had success running a penalty kill unit. So he and Charlie have kind of morphed the 2 ideas together, and I like where it is right now.
So far in the our penalty kill, Paul, we've seen Lowry, Kopp, Thompson, Lewis. Who else gets a shot in there? Is Mason Appleton in that conversation as well?
Yeah, Mason Appleton's in that, and then we have other guys whose numbers are, Kyle Connor does a nice job killing penalties. If he's a 1-minute power play guy, then he's going to be the first guy off the bench to kill penalties, because one of those guys is going to take a penalty at some point or another. So we need 6 on the roster. But again, if you're running 4 lines and you've got your power play split, you can run 4 killers, depending on how long they stay. If you get Kopp and Lowry off the bench and they get it off at a reasonable time, they can go back out. So we'll start with 4, but we have 6 killers planned.
Still with Mason Appleton. This year, he's probably going to find consistent minutes and consistent line mates on that third line. Is there maybe an opportunity for a breakout offensive year for him?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Mason dealt with as a young player, his slow starts in camps. That's just the truth. You know, the player that finished the year was so much different than the player that started the year, and we're happy for the progression. But he had a job to do this year, was to come to camp the way he finished the season, and he's done that. So now so it's like everybody else, Paul, on our whole team, a little bit older, a little bit stronger, more experience. They know what their summer has to look like. So he just looks different. And I think that both Kopp and Lowry are still in, just like all these other guys, in that development role. And now they're not just going on the ice to shut somebody down. They're taking the other team's size. They'll play against the big men on the other team. But these guys can put pucks in the net and they can go to the net. So Mason's learned that there are different styles of offense in the NHL. When you come in from the American League and you have big numbers, you're a dangler, right? You're a playmaking shooter, and then you become who you are over 3 or 4 years, and you play to your strengths, and all three of them will play the game in some ways the same way.
Paul, it's stressful coaching the National Hockey League. What about the added stress of COVID-19 for you when the team's traveling across the country?
Yeah, so I watched the bubble, and I think our medical staff, and I'll give Rob Millett and his staff and all of them, adhered to every rule, every principle. And when I say that, that means they did an awful lot of work, right? There's a time cost to it. They never cut a corner. They kept everybody safe. But you have to be vigilant with it, and those men are. So the stress for me is quite a bit lower than it would be if I didn't have these guys like on us and on me. You're walking in the hallway, you don't have your mask, you're hearing about it, right? And we're used to that now, and so everybody's got their masks on. So, you know, you're hopeful that the people that we interact with take it as seriously as we do. We're exceptionally fortunate to be in Manitoba. We've been lucky in terms of numbers relative to other places where NHL teams will play, but there's more to this than just luck. The people in this community have done what they needed to do to stay as safe as they possibly can. So we've got that benefit going for us. And then you're just hopeful that you can stay healthy and get through the season.
Well, I have two more, so I'll get to one right now, and that is based on your defensemen. You went and talked a little bit about having them be active up the ice a little bit more. Are we going to see, you know, Pionk and Pullman and Morrissey a little bit more up the ice with the puck, or joining the rush this year? And are they encouraged to do that?
Yeah, with and without the puck, and we'll say all six. Like we've got a certain game that we believe in, that we're good at. And part of it is our gap. When we're not our best, our gap is good, and that's offensive and defensive gap. So we need these people to support the rush and get in. So one of the things that you'll notice you get into playoff hockey is that there's just not as many odd man rushes against. And that's because the reloads by the other tracking, whatever you were, the back checking is vigilant, right? It's stronger, it's harder. So you have a whole lot more difficult time getting the puck through the neutral zone with speed in the playoffs than you do in the regular season normally. But this is going to look a lot more like the playoffs from the get-go, right? It's the same kind of sprint. And you've got to get your D up the ice or you're not getting through the neutral zone. For our club, once we set that mindset, we think our defensive gap. So pucks that don't get in, pucks that you don't maintain. When you have to start defending, you defend it from a place further north up the ice away from your goalie. So it's twofold, but it's also not just those guys. Certainly you're going to see Morrissey and Pionk on the offensive side, you know, with the puck, but we want to see all six of those guys up the ice.
How much, like at the beginning part of camp, Paul, you had flip-flop Neil Pionk and Josh Morrissey on the power play, and then you had Patrick Laine on his right side and Blake Wheeler on the left. Will we see a little bit of that this season to have a little bit of a...
Yeah, so that idea wasn't, we were trying to find a place to go, like that wasn't, hey, we don't like what we got. We just feel that you're playing teams 9 and 10 times. If you're going to run the same power play against all those teams, they're going to shut you down. They'll just figure out a way, or they won't maybe completely shut you down, but you're going to get stagnant, right? They're going to have an answer for Patty's shot. They'll have an answer for Casey on the goal line. So you need another place to go. So we just try to, it's not like you got 5 exhibition games in 3 weeks. We just had to touch all of these things once or twice, give them an idea of, what we're talking about on the bench when we say, let's switch sides. When we say, okay, Morrissey's going on that unit, we're moving some people around. They've heard it before, they've worked on it once, and we'll keep practicing that stuff every day.
Well, last one for me, Coach. Thanks a lot for your time. So this is the second time that you've been sort of in this COVID environment for a training camp. So with that comes the experience of knowing what to expect and then how to roll this out. Did you accomplish everything that you wanted to get done at this camp leading up to what you thought you wanted to do?
I liked our camp, and it was considerably different than our last camp. So the biggest change there, Paul, is that we come off, and you know this from being with our team all the time, it was like the end of a season kind of reboot. Like we were finishing a year. So when we came back in, it was a completely different style of camp. We were just trying to get them up to speed. We knew we had an exhibition game. We still had guys, even after that gap, with some minor issues, right? And this was a full-on training camp. So it wasn't, we went hour 40 at times, hour and a half at times of heavy drills. And we were really, really fortunate that we got through it healthy. We just felt we didn't have a choice. It had to be a hard man's camp. And, we had a couple of scrimmages, like the pace, like the style. Those scrimmages weren't wide open and they weren't free flowing, and they weren't guys trying to find their hands and making plays. They looked like hockey games. Not the physical intensity in terms of how they finished their hits, but the hits still got finished, right? There was a respect between men on the ice. I'm happy about the camp, but I'm more, we'll go full circle back to the first question. I'm more happy about the makeup of our team right now. From where we left off to where we are, I got more men in there, and they act like it every day.
Certainly the last question of this one, Paul, you've said numerous times over the years, you like games back-to-back against the same opponent.
Yeah.
This schedule is loaded with that.
Right.
Going forward after this year, would you like to see a little bit more of this?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it, because part of it is a Winnipeg thing, is that we pay a big cost in our travel. And when you're going back to back, you're hitting a fresh team, or your schedule doesn't align like the others does. It's a real cost. Like, you're at a real disadvantage sometimes in the schedule on back to back. You're playing the same team. It's fair. And that's all you're looking for, right? You're not really looking for a better schedule where you get lucky and catch teams tired. You just want fair and back to back. So in the season too, it's also, there's more energy. There's more animosity. There's more, like it kind of was in the old days, right? Home and home. And there's going to be fights in both buildings. So it was good. So I like the back-to-back. 3 in a row. We'll see about that one.
4 in a row against Calgary.
Yeah, sure. We'll get used to each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. I don't know if I'll see you, but I'll see you.
Shop where the players shop. Jets Gear and TrueNorthShop.com are your authentic team stores. Make sure to stock up on all your favorite Winnipeg Jets and Manitoba Moose merchandise today. Visit one of the 5 Jets Gear locations or shop online at TrueNorthShop.com.
Thank you so much to Paul Maurice for taking the time for that interview after his regular media availability. He is always gracious with his time. Mitchell, 3 games in the next 5 days. I believe it's 5 and 7 if you look at a bigger stretch. Currently, this road trip that the Winnipeg Jets embark on has them in Toronto on Monday night, and then they follow that up with a game on Tuesday against the Ottawa Senators. Wednesday, they practice, and then Thursday, they wrap things up on the road with a tilt against the Sens, and then obviously on Saturday at 9 p.m., which is past just about everyone's bedtime given the COVID situation. I don't really know who stays up past 9 p.m., but we're about to. All right, so Mitchell, your thoughts on the opponents this week?
Yeah, I think, over the past few podcasts, I've always talked about how much I enjoy watching the Jets and the Maple Leafs play, and especially against each other, even though it's given me a lot of gray hair watching, just because there's so much skill on the ice. Absolutely anything can happen, and it's end to end. And as Paul Maurice said on Sunday, sometimes leaves the coaches wondering if any of the teams will ever play defense against each other. But so those are always fun. And Ottawa, I'm really looking forward to seeing. Obviously, Tim Stützle gets his first NHL goal the other night, so he's got that kind of milestone in his back pocket, so he'll be playing with a lot of confidence. But even just, in terms of the roster that they've got now, like, there's a lot of names on there that, haven't, you wouldn't necessarily have associated with the Ottawa Senators, just given the last couple of seasons. It's been very, very young. Now they've got, Alex Galchenyuk's there, Evgeny Dadonov's there, Derek Stepan's there, Austin Watson there, former Nashville Predator. The Jets are very, very familiar with him. Eric Gudbranson as well, Braden Coburn. So, and then obviously Matt Murray and net. So, like, the Ottawa Senators have undergone quite a changeover in their roster, but yet still feel like this young and exciting team. So they're 1-1 so far. I mean, as of Sunday night. So they're going to be, I remember the 2 games that the Jets played against them the year before. Patrick Laine, I believe, had a hat trick in the first game, and then Mark Scheifele in Ottawa had a hat trick of his own. I think both of them were like 5-1 scores. They just weren't really that close. And then, going into these matchups, it's because it's number 1 so early in the season, and number 2, the changeover on the Sens. And, obviously the Jets have, some different names as well, and they're still kind of bonding together as a team. Those are going to be some really interesting matchups this week. So really keeping an eye out just to watch the Sens and see how they do and how Tim Stützle plays at the NHL level. And then, obviously playing the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's, 2 teams that have high expectations for themselves. I think it's going to be a real good tilt on Monday.
Absolutely. Really excited to see these games over the course of this week. Jamie, speaking of being excited, I'm pretty sure every hockey fan, especially those in Canada, are just pumped with the hockey they've seen so far from the Scotia North Division. What have you seen from the division as a whole? I mean, it has been exciting. There has been goals galore, some great goaltending. It's been all over the place.
Yeah, I don't know. Outside of, now that I've seen Ottawa play a couple of times, I don't think it's going to be as easy as people think it is. A lot of people had them pick 7th automatically on most pundits' lists in terms of the Scotia North Division. But man, it's there's not going to be a lot of space fighting for those 4 playoff spots. Every team kind of has their holes. Toronto's kind of looks a little lackadaisical in their own end right now, but then they have the firepower. Joe Thornton's looked pretty good so far. Montreal looks a lot different with Josh Anderson. Nick Suzuki is a star. Like, there's no question. Like, he put his name on the map in the playoffs last year, and now I think he's delivering on that one. So Montreal's going to be a problem. They're a lot bigger than they were. Calgary's got that perfect game to play through this 56 game schedule, and they're a perfect playoff team, so they're going to be tough to play against on nights. Edmonton to me is hard. Like, whenever Connor McDavid is not on the scoreboard and Leon Draisaitl, they're in trouble. So that to me, it tells me sometimes if they don't get this fixed around, a lot of guys are like watching them do everything instead of doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think they've got problems there, and Vancouver really hasn't impressed me that much so far either. So I think you're seeing a shift in some ways, but you're going to have a lot of handful with Montreal. Calgary's going to be tough, but it's been great hockey. And I was speaking with Peter Loubardias, who's the color analyst for the radio broadcast for the Calgary Flames. It's going to be a tough sell to go back to the way that things were because, Canadian television is going to love the ratings are going to get out of this. And then it's going to be tough to go back. So I'm curious to see how this is all going to shake out. This is all done, but I think we're in for a hell of a ride over the next 4 months or so, and it's been fun to watch so far in less than a week.
Jamie, couldn't agree with you more there. You hit the nail on the head. It is certainly going to be exciting. Well, we've wrapped up episode number 90 of the Ground Control podcast, so I will wrap this up really quickly because it is Sunday night, and I'm sure you have to get to bed. So good night. Thank you for joining me here on the podcast, gentlemen, and thank you to the Jets fans who tuned in here on the Ground Control podcast. Thank you for listening.
This is Big Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets, hosted by Jets TV. For Jets news, videos, and more, head to winnipegjets.com.